In the next couple of hours, you will learn 90% of the things that you would need to get started with mobile development, and specifically with React Native and Expo. I will assume that you're a complete beginner to React Native, and as if it's your very first time building a mobile application. So that means this tutorial is completely beginner friendly to follow along from start till the end. And the only prerequisite is a basic understanding of React, because as you can imagine, they are pretty similar. And the best part is you don't need a Mac to be able to follow along with this course. Any kind of laptop will do the trick. And I will even show you how to run this application on your actual physical phone. That could be either Android or iOS. And we can also run this application from the simulator in our laptop. Now let me give you a quick demo of the end result so that you know what we are building in this tutorial. So this is a full stack to-do application which has two different tabs. From the to-dos screen, we can add something to the list. We can mark them as completed and uncompleted. We can edit the current to-dos and delete them. And there will be a progress bar at the top of the screen, and it's going to be updated as you add or delete items. And from the settings tab, we can see the stats like the total, completed, and remaining to-dos. And in the preferences section, we can switch the dark mode with this beautiful component. And finally, from the danger zone, we can delete everything in this application. One bonus feature is that this app is going to work in real time. So if you update something, everyone can see it immediately without refreshing the application. So that's the entire application. I know it looks pretty simple, but honestly, it'll teach you everything that you would need to get started with React Native as a complete beginner. And just to give you some examples, you will learn about the most well-known navigators like tab and stack, and you will learn how to implement them in code. Then you will learn the most fundamental components like view, text, touchable opacity, scroll view, FlatList, switch, and much more. Also, you're gonna learn how to create gradients, show confirmation alerts, and most importantly, how to connect to a real-time database that makes everything super fun and easy to work with. Thanks for watching, and let's get into it. So just a quick disclaimer that I have already posted this course in my second channel 3 months ago, but since the channel is new, I think it didn't reach to enough people, so I am reposting this course here on the main channel. Even though it's 3 months old, I promise you it is still completely up to date. I tested out just today before publishing this video, and everything is working as expected. So if you have any questions like, is this course obsolete? No, not at all. Is this course up to date? Yes, 100%. The feedback from this tutorial is also very positive, so I do really hope you will enjoy it overall. And just before we get started, I want to introduce you to CodeRabbit, which is your senior AI teammate to help you review your codebase. So anytime you're working on a side project, building a SaaS, or just vibe coding, you would need someone to review your code to check for memory leaks, security issues, or whether you're following the best practices. As a beginner, it's really hard to catch all these issues, and that's where CodeRabbit comes into play. So basically, before you merge the pull requests, you will get detailed comments telling you what you're missing and what is wrong in your codebase so that you can fix them before pushing to production. Now, if you're using a CLI based coding agent like Cloud Code, there is CodeRabbit CLI, which brings instant code reviews directly to your terminal, and it integrates with Cloud Code, Cursor CLI, and other AI coding agents. So while you generate the code, CodeRabbit will ensure it's production ready. And if you're using something like VS Code, they have a free extension that will give you line-by-line code reviews right in your editor. If you watch my previous courses, I actually walk you through the entire process to show you how helpful it is. Now, they are kindly sponsoring this course, and I'll leave the link in the description so that you can get free access to their platform. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. The source code of this project will be free in the description. Give it a star and feel free to use it however you wish. So to get started with, I have an empty folder which is opened up in VS Code. You can create this in any place. In my case, I just created on my desktop, and this is the name that I came up with. You can call this anything that you wish. just open it up in VS Code and maximize your screen. And before we get into our code base, I'd like to mention that you have to have Node.js installed on your machine. So probably you already have this, but just in case if you don't, head over to nodejs.org and click to this install Node.js button. Your operating system would be selected automatically. In my case, it is Mac, but you can use any of them depending on your operating system. And for the version, I would recommend you to get the long-term support. And at the moment, it is version 22. But if you're watching this video in the future, it could be 23, 24, 25, whatever that is. Just go ahead, install the latest, the long-term support. Alright, so I'll be assuming that you have Node.js installed on your machine. And if you want to double check this, you can open up your terminal and just say node -- version. And you should get something like this. This is the version that I have. Alright, so just before we get into the code base, I'd like to walk you through one more thing, which is going to be our, let's say, diagrams. And you can find a link in the description so that you can have this as your notes. But this is something that I have explained in the past in my past tutorials. Just in case if you are new here, I'd like to walk you through it once again. If you have watched this in the past, maybe you can skip the next 5 minutes. So let's ask the question, what is React Native in the first place? And I will read this out loud. So React Native is a framework that allows you to build mobile applications using React. You can write either JavaScript or TypeScript. And in this tutorial, we'll be using TypeScript specifically. But you can also use JavaScript, as I said. And then there is something called cross-platform development, which means writing code only once that can run on multiple platforms. And this is exactly what React Native is. It is a cross-platform framework because you can write one codebase in JavaScript and you can deploy it to both iOS and Android. So now that we know the basics of React Native, you might be asking, how do we use to build applications in the past? So let's say you're a developer and you would like to build an application for your fitness purposes, right? You would like to build a fitness application. So this means you had to learn 2 different programming languages, like something like Swift, so that you can deploy it to App Store for the Apple users. And then you would like to build the exact same app for Android users and deploy it to Play Store. So you had to learn 2 different languages, which is going to be pretty time consuming. And then if you were a company founder, that means you had to get 2 different teams, right? One to build the app for the App Store, and then the other team for the Android devices for the Play Store. So it's going to be pretty expensive. But thanks to React Native, we can just learn JavaScript and basically built the exact same app with only one language. And in my notes, I just typed this out. So you had to get a MacBook, which is pretty expensive, and you had to use Xcode as your IDE. And then for the Play Store, you had to learn Android SDK and its frameworks, and you had to use Android Studio as the IDE. But now thanks to React Native, we can just have JavaScript and VS Code, and we should be good to go. So we are talking about React Native, how great it is, but from their documentation, they say React Native by itself is not enough. And here is a screenshot. They basically say if you're going to use React Native, please use it with a framework like Expo. So this is the recommended framework that we can use. And let's actually check out the React Native documentation. So this is what they say, and you can take a look at the Expo as well, which is under the expo.dev. So we'll get into this. For now, let's go over our notes. And in this case, a framework is going to be a set of tools that is going to allow us to build the mobile application pretty fast, quickly, and it's going to have all kinds of features that is coming out of the box. So in this case, Expo is going to be a great choice for us. And this is just something that you would like to keep in mind if you're just getting started with mobile development and specifically with React Native. your go-to framework is going to be Expo. And just before you ask, let me tell you the applications that are built with Expo. So this is a screenshot that I have found online. The Expo company has just shared this, where they say the number 1 and 4 in App Store is built with Expo, which is the Blue Sky social media application, and then the Phantom crypto wallet app. And also Coinbase is built with Expo. So all in all you have to understand from here, let me just do Control Z a bit. Okay, so all in all, Expo is a great choice to get started with, and here are some proved examples. And please do not get confused, React Native is not the same thing as Expo. Basically, Expo is built on top of React Native. So at the end of the day, you are still writing React Native, but you just have some more optimizations, tools, and services that are coming with our love Expo. Alright, so it is like if you have ever used Next.js, it's the same kind of concept. Next.js is built on top of React, but it has some additional optimizations, some features like server rendering, let's say, server actions, API routes, so on and so forth, right? The images are optimized, links are optimized, you know, that kind of stuff. And here I have a couple of different comparisons that we would like to go over pretty quickly just before we get into coding. And the point of this comparisons is just to show you how similar it is to write React Native compared to React Web. So in React Web, right, if you're building a website, a web application with React, then you would use things like div, h1, p, and you would give a class name, right? But in React Native, what you would do is a little bit different. These components are coming from React Native. So for the div, you would use view, which is like a box that you can add some styles just to make your application look clean. And for any kind of text, that is h1, h2, 3, 6, p, any kind of text, you have to have this text component and wrap your text with it. So you would put some text and it has to be wrapped with the text component. And this text is coming from React Native. And we'll see some examples in the next couple of minutes. And then for the styling, you would create the class name in web, right? And you would have a CSS file where you have class names and just use them, like card, profile image, content, that kind of thing. But in React Native, it's a little bit different. You would import style sheet, which is going to be an object, and you would have the key value pairs. So this is going to be your class name and then the styling, right? Which is this part. So you would say styles. You can call this anything like X, but this is the convention. Then you would go into the component. You would say styles.card, which is going to give you these classes. And then styles.profile image, right? And then you would get all these styling. So we'll see this in action. But for now, let's just get into the next comparison, which is the event handling. Now on the web, you have events like click, on mouse over, so on and so forth. But in React Native, since this is a mobile application, you would have presses rather than clicks. So on press, on long press, and millions of different events that we can get into. So here we have an input component, or I think it is a button. The equivalent of it is going to be touchable opacity, or there is something called pressable. We can also see this in action, but just keep this in mind. It's almost the same thing with a different component, and what it does in the background is completely different. The implementation details, so probably it is not the same thing as button, but you can think of it in that way. And then the next thing is the lists. In React Web, you would do things like items.map, and for every single item, you would return some kind of a component. You can do the exact same thing on React Native, but the optimized version of doing it is using a component called FlatList. Again, we will see this in action, but just as an example, you would put the data. This is going to be your array that you would like to map over. And for every single item, you would like to run a function like render item is going to get the item and return something. If this looks complicated, it's completely fine. We will see this in action in the next couple of minutes. And then finally, I have some form examples. So you would create a form component and have onSubmit handler. But in React Native, we don't really have a form or onSubmit. We would basically put the input, and on the button, you would have onPress. So once again, you would have input component. In the web, right, you have placeholder, value, onChange, type. It's almost the same thing, but this time it is text input. So once again, we'll get into all of them. These are just some quick examples that I wanted to mention before we get into coding. Now, enough talk, let's actually go ahead and get started with a React Native Expo application. We'll be using a command which is going to be coming from Expo. So let's say read the documentation. Here is the quick start. We would like to say npx create expo app latest. So I will copy this and paste it into my terminal. Let me just paste this, and at the very end I'll put dot, which means install it under the current directory. So this is going to give us a boilerplate application, a boilerplate code base, but I think it looks a little bit complicated for a beginner. So what we'll be doing, basically deleting most of them. So we are going to reset the project, and then I will explain everything from scratch so we can basically know how to get started with it as if we are a complete beginner. So let's wait for this to be installed, and then we are going to reset the project. And for this, they have reset project script, which is going to basically delete most of the things like the hooks, constants, components, etc. And while this is installing, we can see the file and folder structure. It's pretty similar to React, right? You have some custom hooks. Now, of course, some stuff are coming from React Native that we're going to see, but basically this is just React, right? You have some constants, components, and it'll be functional components, right? You have export function, whatever that is, and you're returning some kind of a component that is either coming from React Native or Expo router. And we'll see all of them, I promise. So looks like everything has been installed. Now, even though it says you have an error, I think this is not an error. I'll just say Command-Shift-P and reload the window. And I think it should get rid of that warning. Sometimes VS Code works a little bit buggy, but here we go, we don't really have any errors. Now we would like to reset this project. Let's open up the terminal, clear everything, and just say npm run reset-project, which is going to run this file, and it'll ask if you want to delete everything or just put it under this folder. So I'll just say yes. Alright, so as you can tell, there is a new folder that is just being created, and these are the folders that have been deleted, right? So this is what we had just a couple of seconds ago. And we don't really need this folder, so we can delete it completely. And currently, we just have a simple app folder, and we have two different files, which is something that we'll get into. But first, let's see how we can run this application in the first place. Basically, you have two different options. And here it goes. So you have two different options where you can either install Expo Go on your phone. So this is the application that you would install either from App Store or Play Store. Once you install it, you are going to get a QR code in our terminal just in a second, and we are going to scan it. And once you have done this, it's going to open up the application on your physical device. And I will show you this in a second. And then the other option is using a simulator. This is what I'll be doing because I have my simulator on the right hand side so that I can show you the end result. If you're on Windows, you would like to install Android Studio, and if you're on Mac, you would like to get Xcode. So if you're going to learn React Native and build a couple of different projects, in the long run, I would say just install a simulator so that you can run the application on your laptop. But if you'd like to pretty quickly get started with it, then it's completely fine to install Expo Go just to test it out on your phone. So I have both of them, and let me show you how we can run it on our phone first. We'll go into the terminal. I will clear this with Command K, or you can type clear. If you're on Windows, you can just say CLS. But here I'll say npx expo, and this is going to give me a QR code. So let's first try to scan this from our phone. So here I am. Just go ahead, get your phone, and make sure that you are connected to the same Wi-Fi as your laptop. This is really important. Once you are connected, just try to scan this QR code. This is what I'll be doing. Let me get the QR code, and then the application should start in this Expo application. So let me try to actually show you the output. Oops, I think I need to open up the camera, but first, like, this is what we have. It says edit the application index.tsx. It's basically the exact same thing as you can see here. So I'll put 123 at the end, and I will save. Just notice how it's going to update in real time. Alright, so I just got 123 at the end. This is how easy it is to get started with the mobile application in your actual device, right? Now, how do we run this on simulator? I'll basically go ahead, open this up, put it on the side, and if you're on Mac, you would like to press I in your keyboard, which is going to open up the iOS simulator. If you're on Windows, you should press A so that it would open up the Android simulator, right? So I'll press I. It should start the simulator with our application. And you can even press W, which is going to run this application on the web. So yes, you can literally build web applications with Expo, but we are not really interested in that. We'll like to build the mobile application, right? So here it goes. We can edit anything, like let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It should update immediately. So I think that's it for this entire section where we have learned about React Native, the basics, the theory, the comparisons. You can, I think, go over it once again from the notes. And then we have two different options to be able to follow along with this tutorial. And I think we have just seen both of them. So that's gonna be it for this section. And I think in the next one, we can just play around with this code base a bit. And then in the two later sections, we're going to actually get started with our mobile application, which is going to look like this. Alright, so hopefully I'll see you in the next section. So this is where we left. In the previous section, we have started a basic boilerplate code base using Expo, and currently this is the home screen that we can see. So let me just walk you through the file and folder structure, and we'll go through some of the most used components. So everything starts under the app folder, which is a special folder that comes up with Expo, and it is using file-based routing, which basically means every single file is going to be a different screen, right? It has the navigation built on top of it using file-based routing. So we have the underscore layout file, which is a special file where our application starts, and we'll get into it in a second. But here we go. We have the home screen, which is index.tsx, and we have a view component with a text component within it. So let's try to see what we can add here. Under the style, we can put an object and basically add any kind of style as key value pairs. So I'll say background color is going to be something like red, and it should update immediately, right? So let's try to actually think about it. If you put a couple of different styles, at some point this file is going to be really ugly and out of hand. So what you can do is taking this object, so I'll just go ahead, cut this, and I will create some styles. So I'll say const styles, which is going to be importing style sheet coming from React Native. So we'll import that, and we'll say create. And here we can pass an object with our own objects, or with our own classes. Here I'll say something like container. And then as the value, I will paste the object that we just cutted. Now I'll say this is going to be using styles.container. So now our code looks a lot more cleaner because we don't really need to think about the styling. It has been defined in a different place. And you can add a bunch of different classes. So for this, I'll say, let's say style. I'll be using styles dot, let's say, content. And we need to create this. I'll go ahead, maybe just duplicate it. Let's say this is going to be content. And for the font size, maybe we can say something like 52. It should update immediately. So you can have as much as classes that you wish. Just go ahead, define it, and use it right here under the style prop. Now let's try to put a text outside of the text component. Here I'll say something like hi, and if I save, it's going to crash. Basically, it says, let me open up the terminal. It says if you're going to have a text, it should be under the text component. So you would go right here and wrap this with a text component so that it can work correctly. Now you should be able to see it in the UI. And one more thing, out of the box, flex is going to work in the column direction. In the web, flex would work in the row direction automatically because in the web you have so much spaces, right? But here in a mobile application, you just have pretty limited space. So when you say flex, it's going to be in the column direction by default. If you wanted to, you can update it. Let's say flex direction is going to be row. So they should be side by side, and we should put a comment. Now they are side by side, and let's say this is going to be something like 22. So we have this text and then the other one. Let's say something like gap is going to be maybe 10. We should have some gap. So I think we got the point. Just keep that in mind. Flex is going to be in the column direction out of the box. If you wanted to update it, you should add this flex direction as row. Now we can try to delete the background and maybe use a different component. So let's say I'll put a link. Let's say this is coming from either React Navigation or Expo. In this case, I'll be using the Expo router. I think this is a lot more optimized than the usual link component. So here I'll say visit about screen. And currently we don't really have this screen. Let's try to create it. You can call this anything, but I'll just say about.tsx, and I have an extension. Let me zoom out and show you that. Just type ES7 and install this one. So React Redux, React Native snippets. And if you have it, you can basically say RNFE, which means React Native Functional Export Component. So it'll just save you a lot of time, and you can say about. It's going to update the content as well as the export name. So let's say this is about screen, and go into the index.tsx, put the href. That'll take us to the about screen. And as you can tell, now this is type safe because it immediately understands that you have an about file. So let's say about, save, click to it. Now we are in the about screen. And as you can tell, we already have the back button. Now, how does that work? Why do we have this stack kind of navigation? Well, it's coming from the root layout. Thanks to this stack navigator, thanks to this component, we already have the stack navigation working out. And in simple terms, this is the stack navigation. The new screens will be coming from the right hand side. So I'll say visit about screen. It'll be coming from the right, and the previous screens will be on the left. So this is how it works in iOS. In Android, you would have, I think, stack popping up from the bottom of the screen. Basically, it'll have a similar experience, but of course, a little bit different. And let's say you would like to get rid of this text, right? Here it says index and then about. This is coming from the actual file name, but if you really wanted to get rid of this, we could say screen options and say header shown is going to be equal to false. Now it is gone, but the problem here is that the content is overflowing with this status bar, and we are going to see how to fix it. For now, I will delete this. Okay, now let's say you would like to have the title, but actually update this. Say something like about screen. So instead of just stack, let's put the closing tag as well. And go within this, we will say stack.screen. The first screen that we have is the about screen, right? So we can say name and just put the about file or like about name. And actually the first screen we have is index. Let's put the index, which is the home screen. And let's say we would like to update this title. So you can say screen, or let me see, we have options. You can say title and you can put anything. Let's say home. Now it's been updated. Let's try to duplicate it and do the same thing for the about screen. Put the file name as we have right here. For the options, I'll say about. And here we go, it's been updated, and it even updates the back button. Previously it was index, now it says home. Alright, so this is just something that I wanted to mention. But now the thing is, I don't really want to have the stack navigator for these screens, right? I want to have what we call the tab navigator. So what is tab navigator? As the name suggests, basically you have different tabs at the bottom of the screen, and whenever you click to one of them, it's going to get the related screen. So we are under the Todos tab. This is what we got, and if you press this one, this is the screen that you're gonna get. Pretty easy to understand, and here is a description if you want to read it. Now, I already know how to implement the tab navigator, but let's say you don't know, all you have to do is search for it, right? Go under the documentation, I just search tab navigator expo, and they will beautifully show you how you can get started with it. Basically, you would like to create a tabs folder and put your tabs as well as a layout. Now, this layout file is going to be needed so that you can basically customize these icons, colors, text, etc. So let's try to go through it. I will go under the VS Code, kill the left hand side, or actually open this up, and here under the app, I will say have this folder called tabs, and we don't need the about file, so I will delete that. That was just for example purposes. So I'm going to delete that, and we can get rid of this stack screen, right? And under the index.tsx, we can delete this link because we don't really have that screen anymore. Under the tabs, we are going to have a layout underscore layout.tsx file, and let's say index.tsx, and actually it's going to be this one, so we can drag and drop it. So this is the home screen, which is this one, so the Todos screen and the settings screen. So I will say settings.tsx, and I'll say rnfe to get the snippet. Let's say settings screen. Let me just close everything. So we have the root layout where it says we have the home screen, but instead I'd like to replace this with the tab navigator, right? So I'll say instead of the home screen only, we actually have the tabs folder where we have two different screens. I know that this is a little bit confusing, but just follow along with me. In the next 5 minutes, everything should make sense, I promise. So we have one stack screen, which is the tabs, and within this, we are going to actually set up our tabs. So let's see how we can get started with it. So let's try to save the root layout, which is this file, and go under the tabs layout. So I will say rnfe, and for the name, we can say tabs layout. You can call this anything, but probably it should be like this so that it makes sense. Now, instead of returning a view, we would like to return a component called tabs, which is coming from Expo router. And this is going to take a couple of different options, and actually pretty much of them, but let's say screen options, for now leave it empty. And then we are going to have two different screens, which is tabs.screen, self-closed, and the name is going to be index. So just like in the past, and this time we will put some options where the title is going to be Todos. So basically we are adding this text, and we'll do the same thing for this one. And we also want to put some icons, right? So let's see how we can make that work. We'll say title is going to be Todos, and tab bar icon is going to be a function. Let's say an arrow function where we would like to return something, and this will get two different props, let's say color and size. That is also focused, but we can just use these for now. And for the icons, I'll be using ion icons. Let's say ion icons, and this is going to be coming from Expo. So we can scroll to the top, say import, type this in, which is going to be ion icons from @expo vector icons. So there are a couple of different options, or actually pretty much of them. In the past I have used feather as well, but you have all of them, right? In this case I'll be using this one. Let's say ion icons, and you would add the name of the icon, and in this case it's going to be flash o line. So let's try to duplicate this, and name is going to be, this time I think it is settings. This is what we have as the file name, and then title could be settings. For the icon I will say, I think just settings. Let's save what we're gonna get. Here we go, we have two different tabs. Now it's really small, right? We can update it by passing the size. So I'll say size should be equal to the size prop. So this is how that would look like. Let's do the same thing for this one. It should increment immediately. And we can also add the color. Let's say just get the color as it is. And I'd like to copy this, paste this in as well. Color is going to update as well. Now you might be asking, how do we even change these colors? So you can go right here and you could say tab bar active tint color. So if it is active, let's say we would like to have the red color. So this is how you can make that work. And if it is inactive, let's say we would like to have a green color. So I'll say tab bar inactive tint color. Let's say it'll be green. Now this is active, this is inactive, and vice versa. So of course we are going to update these values, but for now let's keep them as it is. And then we can update the tab bar style, which is going to be an object. So here, let's say I would like to update the background color. So for now, let's say something like blue. It's going to update the background color, right? And then we can add the border top width. I'll go with 1 so that it is just subtle, and border top color. And I think I'll just go with something like yellow in this case. It's not really visible, but I promise we are going to update them so that it can look like this, where it is really clean, as you can see in this example. And on top of this, we can add some, let's say, height, padding bottom, and padding top so that it looks like this. Let's delete the padding top, and you can see the changes. Let's do the same thing for the bottom. Bring this back. So you can basically play around with it. The other thing that I would like to implement is the tab bar label style. And also I just updated the background color so that it is a little bit easier to look at. The other option that I'm going to add is the tab bar label style. So basically I want to increment the font size and the font weight. So let's try to something like 18. It should update immediately. Let's say I'll go with 12 in this case. Now, one more thing that we would like to get rid of is the header, right? So here I'll say header shown is going to be equal to false. Now it is gone. And I'd like to do the same thing in the root layout. Here I'll say screen options. Let's say options, and paste this in basically. Oops, I'll just paste this in. Header shown is equal to false. Now it's not really visible. Content is not in the view, but we're going to fix it, as I said in the past. Alright, so we have just set it up our tabs navigator. And just before we end this section, I would like to take a quick pause and walk you through it what we have done so far. Well, I don't know why I cannot close these files. Let's just say reload the window so that VS Code is working correctly. Alright, so under the app folder, we have created our tabs navigator with the help of this folder, right? It is called tabs and it is wrapped with brackets. Under the root layout, under the tabs layout, we have set our tabs. So we have given some colors for the active and inactive state, some more styles just to make it look nice, the background colors, border, so on and so forth, right? And then we have hide the header, and then we have two different tabs. So we have updated the text, which is this one, the title. You can actually delete it if you don't really want to see it, but I'll keep this as it is. Then for the icon, we put the flash outline. Same for the settings, just make sure that these names are actually matching with the file names. Alright, so I hope that makes sense. Just pause the video, take a look at this code. I think it is nothing complicated. The concept is a little bit of confusing because you have to create this weird folder structure, but I think you can read the documentation if you want to learn all the details, right? So there's a different example. You can see, but I think we have just learned an easier one. Then we have the home screen with some styles, same for the settings screen. And in the root layout, we just say we still want to use the stack navigator, and here's our only stack, which is under the tabs folder. Since the options, the header shown is false, we can actually delete this title because it is not visible in the first place. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that wasn't really confusing. If so, I think it is still fine because we will see the details in the incoming sections. So with that, I think I'll leave it here and see you in the next one. So this is where we left. In this section, I would like to set up my code base in a way that it is working correctly for the light mode and dark mode. So here's a quick showcase of the end result where we will have a dark mode as well as a light mode, and user can update it from the preferences. And whatever they do, we are going to keep track of it so that if they close the application and come back, we should still remember what they had previously. Basically, as you can tell, for this we'll be using local storage, right? We are going to store these preferences in our local storage so that we know what user wants to have for the mode. And whenever the mode changes, we are going to update the colors. So here you can see in the light mode, the background is light and the text is black. And here it is completely different. Background is this, let's say blue dark color and text is white. So how can we make that work? It is not just the background and text, but actually everything changes, even if you can't really see it correctly, but trust me, everything changes. So for this, we are going to create a custom hook. Just like in React, we can go under the hooks folder and create a file called useTheme. You can call this anything. This is the name that I'll be going with. So I'll say tsx and create an RNFE. Let's say useTheme. Instead of returning the view component, we would like to actually create a context and return a provider. We'll see what that means. But first, I'd like to mention, if you don't want to type this out, I have prepared an entire GitHub gist. You can find the link in the description. Just go ahead, click to it, and scroll to the bottom where we have this custom hook. So this is going to be the end result. You can copy it and paste it completely, but I actually want to walk you through it step by step. So what I want to copy and paste is the dark colors. So these are the colors for the dark mode, same for the light mode, and some TypeScript types so that our code base is happy with us. The TypeScript is happy with us, right? So here I'll go ahead, paste this in just before the use theme hook. And let's scroll to the top. we have an interface where we say every single color scheme should have the background color, surface, and all of them, as you can tell. And we'll just say here are the light colors and here is the type. So this is just TypeScript specific, nothing related to React Native or React even. It is just TypeScript. So we have the light colors and dark colors. We'll be using them depending on the choice of the user. So these are the colors. Now I would like to create one more type. Let me try to zoom in, and actually we can shrink those because we don't really need to see it at the moment. So these are just types and some, constant values. Here I'll say interface for the theme context type. Again, this is going to look a little bit confusing for the next 5 minutes, but then it should make sense. Let's say is dark mode, and let's say this is going to be a boolean. Let's say boolean, and then we can have a function. Let's say toggle dark mode. User is going to call this, and this function doesn't really return anything. So let's say void, which means this function doesn't really return anything, right? And then it's going to take some colors, and it is type of colors scheme. Now we can create the context. So I'll say const theme context, and we can say call the method, which is create context. So this is going to be coming from React. And we can just have the undefined as the initial value, and we can make this type safe, where we'll say this could be either undefined or it could be theme context type. So this has nothing to do with React Native. I just want to mention it once again. This is the basic React that we are doing at the moment. And as I have told you, we would like to have something like local storage. But just like in web, you cannot say local storage.get item. Instead, we have a different package that is called async storage. Let's try to install it. I will get it from my notes, open up the terminal, kill this, clear it, and I'll say npm install and paste this in. Let me put a space. Here I'll say npm install add react-native-async-storage/async-storage. So this is the entire name. Let's run this. And just so that you can have it in your notes, I will put a comment at the very top of this file. So async storage is React Native's simple promise-based API for persisting small bits of data on user's device. So you can think of it as the mobile application equivalent of the browser's local storage, but it is asynchronous and cross-platform. So all in all, it is a local storage that we'll be using to store small bits of data on user's device. Now let's try to create a theme provider. And as I said before, this has nothing to do with React Native. I would like to copy and paste from the GitHub gist, and I will walk you through it. So let's say import the React node, use state, use effect, async storage, and let me grab this from the nodes, paste it right here. We can delete this view and text, but we'll be using this one. So we have just created a theme provider, which is taking the children, and here is the type just to make TypeScript happy. And we have a state to keep track of the dark mode or light mode. And a use effect is going to run. So this will basically get the user's choice. So this is to remember the user's choice from the last login. And then a method which is going to toggle the state that is either light mode or dark mode. And it'll of course update the local storage with the new latest data. And then for the colors, if we are in the dark mode, we will be using the dark colors, which is this object. And if we are in the light mode, we are going to be using these colors. And we are passing these values so that we can use it in our application. And to be able to use this provider, to be able to use this context, we are going to create this hook, which is going to be calling the context. So I'll say zoom in and get the context. I'll import the use context hook and pass the theme context. And we'll say if this is undefined, we can throw an error that says useTheme must be used within a theme provider. But in the else case, we can just return the context. Alright, so 132 lines of code that is completely React code. It has nothing to do with React Native other than this package. So since this is not really related to React Native, I'll just assume you understand this completely. And I think this is pretty easy code to understand. Now we are going to go under the, let's say, root layout, and we can wrap our entire application with this context so that in our application we can use the dark mode and light mode. So here I'll say theme provider. It should be coming from not React but from our hooks, and wrap everything with it. So within our entire application we can use these values that are coming from our context. And now that we have these values, we can actually use the colors for the tab bar navigation, right? So I'll go under the tabs, under the layout. Instead of using these static colors, I'll say something like get the colors from our custom hook, which is useTheme, and make sure it is coming from the hooks. Alright, so now I'll say instead of red, this should be colors the primary color, right? It should update hopefully in a second. Let's say for the green, we'll say colors dot, let's say text muted. Well, I don't really know why this does not update. Maybe it's because the application is not running. Let's try to rerun this, and if you press R, it's going to reload the application. Now it is working, and for this one, I will say colors the surface. And finally, for this, we can say colors, just use the border color. Alright, so by default, it is using the light mode. Now you might be asking why this is the case. It's because it's going to run this line where it says, are we in the dark mode? Which is equal to false. So it's going to get the light colors. Now let's try to put a button where we can toggle the state. I will go under the index, and here let's say put a touchable opacity, which is like a button. Say opacity, and this is going to be coming from React Native. Let's say toggle the mode, and when we press to it, let's say on press, call this method, which is going to be, let's see, under the useTheme, we have called this as toggle dark mode. So let's try to import it. I'll say const get the toggle dark mode from our custom hook. Again, just make sure to install it, import it from this path, right? And here, once we clicked it, we should be running this method. We have an error because this has to be under a text component. Now let's try to toggle the state. We are in the dark mode. And if you close the app and open this up once again by pressing I, it should actually keep track of that state because it is stored in the local storage, right? In the async storage. Here we can see. Now if we go with light mode, close the app and come back, it should be under the light mode, as you can tell. Alright, so it is working correctly. We have just set up our custom hook so that we can later in the video implement the dark and light mode with this switch component. And with that, I think we can end this section right here. I know that we are going pretty slow, but I'm just trying to make sure that we understand everything just before we move on with the next section. So let's try to close everything and go through what we have done in this section, like a quick summary. So we have created a custom hook to be able to keep track of the dark mode, right? And here this is like 130 lines of code, which has nothing to do with React Native, honestly. This is just some TypeScript types, some constants, and some React code. So we are creating a context, a provider on top of it with a state, and we are going to update the state with this method. And we are using the async storage, which is like a local storage but for mobile devices. And for this, we have used this package. And of course, we have a hook so that we can get the context with the values. So whenever we need any of these values, we'll be calling this hook, just like what we have done under the home screen. So we are using the useTheme hook to get any of these values. So we have 3 different values, and in this case, we are using this method. So that's gonna be it for this section. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so this is where we left. Now it is time to get started with a database. You can use anything. In this case, I'll be using Convex. So this is our current tech stack. We have React Native and Expo initialized. On top of this, I'd like to introduce a backend solution, which is going to be Convex. So you can find the link in the description. Let's go ahead and visit it. This is not just a database, but it is a complete backend solution. So it has, database, storage, let's say authentication, background jobs, you name it, it has it all. And there are some alternatives like Firebase, Supabase, but in this case we'll be using Convex, and you're going to see it is really easy to get started with. And the best part is it is completely free to get started with up until 20 projects, which is insanely generous. So I'll go ahead and log in with my GitHub account. Let's do it pretty quickly. Okay, so I am in. Now let's try to create a new project. But instead of doing it here in the dashboard, we are going to create it from our terminal. So these are all the projects that I have in the past. You can basically ignore all of them because we are going to start from scratch. So let's go and visit the, let's say, VS Code. In one terminal, I have npx expo running. So we have our application that is running correctly. And on top of this, I will create a new one and I'll say npm install, let's say Convex. So this is going to install the dependency, and then we would like to log in with Convex. So let's say npx convex dev. So I am already logged in. It's going to immediately ask me if I want to create a project. But if you have never done this, it'll basically redirect you to Convex. You will log in and then you're going to see the exact same thing that I have. So I will say create a new project, and for the project name, I'll just leave it as it is, or maybe I'll just say Todo app YouTube. And what is this called? Okay, so it is the, for the development. Just ignore this completely. This is what I have done for the testing purposes, but this is what we're going to have. So Todo app YouTube, let's run this. And then finally, we would like to go with cloud deployment. So this will create a Convex folder for you. And it has some code that you don't really need to think about. So this is all the things that we're gonna use, like let's say under the hood. Okay, so this is what Convex prepares for you so that your Convex functions work correctly. So you don't really need to worry about this folder at all. And now actually everything is ready. So we are connected to this project. And for now, if we visit that, we are going to see we don't really have any data. We don't have any tables, nothing at all. So let's try to create a schema first, and then we can create some functions. And a schema is basically like, it's literally a schema where we define our tables. So let's go under the Convex. Okay, so let's say ts file is going to be completely type safe. And from the Convex server, we would like to import both of these. So we're going to import define schema and define table. Then one more thing that I'd like to import, again, it's going to be coming from Convex values this time. And this is like the validator, and you're going to see what that does. So let's say export default define schema. And we're going to pass an object, and we're going to put all the tables that we're going to have. So in our application, we will only have the to-dos table. So let's say define table. And within this, you can put all the fields that you're going to need in this table. So every single to-do is going to have a text. So let's say it's going to be type of string. So this is why we are using the v, why we are using the define table and define schema. And then every single to-do is going to have a Boolean field, which is called is completed. And we're going to say v.boolean. and just call this. Now imagine if you're building a complex application, then you would have a bunch of different tables like users, right? You would do the exact same thing basically. Let's duplicate it. This time it would be users, and you would have things like full name, email, so you get the point. But in our case, this is the only table that we're gonna need. And once you save this file, it's going to actually deploy your changes to Convex. Now, if you open this up, you can see this is literally the code that we have just written, and now it has been deployed to Convex in real time. So it is really mind-blowing that it works in real time without you doing anything. So let's go under the VS Code. There is one more thing that I want to mention. So from here on out until the end of this video, you always want to have two different terminals. In one of them, you're gonna run npx expo, right? You're gonna run the mobile application. And in this one, you would like to have this running. So even if you kill this, right? Let's clear this up. You would say npx convex dev. So you always want this to be open, so that whenever you do some changes, it's going to deploy it to your Convex account. So let's go under the Convex. We would like to create one file for Todos, let's say .ts. And here in this file, we're gonna have a couple of different functions so that we can fetch some, let me show you. So we're gonna have a couple of different functions so that we can fetch our Todos from the database. We can delete some of them, edit, and mark as completed or uncompleted, right? So we would like to add a couple of different functions. Now, to be able to fetch some data, we have some queries, and to be able to delete, update, or edit, we have some mutations, and I actually have it in the notes. So from our React Native application, we're gonna send a GET request, which is basically a query to our database, right? And it could be something like get Todos. And for the mutation, we have things like create, update, and delete. So anything other than get is going to be a mutation, where we can say create to do, update to do, and delete to do. So I hope that makes sense. Pretty easy concept. Now let's go under this file, and we're going to write this with the Convex syntax. So at first it might be a little bit weird, but I think it's completely easy to understand. So let's say export const and the name of your function. You can say anything, but I'll say get Todos. And as you can tell, this is going to be a query. So let's say call the query, and we can import it from, let's say import query from, as you can imagine, it's going to be coming from this folder, right? So I'll say go one up under the generated and go under the server. So this will take an object where we can pass a handler function. So whenever you call this query, this function is going to run. So let's say it'll be an async function where we can get the context. Now this is context, not convex, okay? So with this context, you can interact with your database. So we can say await context.database.query. And we would like to get all the to-dos. And what I'd like to do, just order them in the descending order. So the latest to do will be at the very top, and the oldest one would be at the very bottom. And we can say just go ahead, collect every single one of them. And let's say const, like you can also do just return, but let's just keep the code base a little bit more beginner friendly. So I'll just say these are all the to-dos where we would like to return it. Okay, so literally that's it. This is what you need for this query. And if you take a look at the Convex dashboard, you can see this function that we have, right? So if you click to it, this is literally the code that we have written. And now it's been deployed once again because we are running this npx convex dev in a separate terminal. Alright, so we just learned about queries. Now it is time to create a mutation. So I'll say export const, let's say add to do. And it's going to be coming from the same folder as a mutation. Again, we're going to pass the object. Let's say we are going to have a handler function. That's going to be async, let's say context. Now the other thing we would like to get is the arguments. So let's say args, and we'll say this will be an object because if a user wants to add a query, if a user wants to add a to-do, they need to put the text. So we're going to take this as an argument into this function. So here I'll say we're going to get a text that is type of string. So say v.string, and let's go and try to import v. This is going to be coming from convex values. And then we have the convex error import. We'll be using it in a second. So we have the args, and we can grab these args under the second argument. So here now we can say, we'll say await context.db, and we can say just insert something under the to-dos table, right? And here we will pass that thing we would like to insert. So it's going to be the text field, which is coming from the arguments. So say args.text, and then the other field is going to be is completed. And here you can see it is completely type safe without you doing anything. So I'll say is completed by default is going to be equal to false. So when you add something, by default, it's going to be not completed, right? And if user wants to change it, they can do so. So let's say, like that's literally the entire function. But what I'd like to do is saying const to-do ID, because this is going to return the ID of the newly created to-do, and we can just return it from this function, from this mutation. Okay, so that's it for the mutation. We have args, and if you wanted to, you could have the args here as well. But of course, it's going to be empty because we don't really need to have args in this function. And then we're just doing an insert operation. Now, on top of this, we would like to have, the toggle state. When you click to this check mark, it's going to update the database. If it is completed, it's going to be uncompleted, and vice versa, right? So it's going to toggle the state. Here, I'd like to do the exact same thing. Let me just copy this line, paste this in, close this correctly, and here instead of add, I'll say toggle to do. We are going to have the args, and in this case, we are going to get the ID so that we know which to do that we are trying to update. Here I'll say it's going to be v.string, but actually we can put the ID as the type. So we'll say this ID is going to be type of ID, and it's going to be an ID of to-dos. So that's the argument that we're going to accept, and on top of it, we're going to have the handler function. Let's say async, get the context and the arguments, and build the logic. So first we would like to fetch that to do. Here I'll say await context.db.get, and we're going to pass the ID, which is args.id. So if you say something like idx, of course it's going to fail. Here it says you just said we are going to get an ID, but now you say it's idx. So it's completely type safe, and it's going to warn you. Let's say this is going to return us the to-do, and we can just add a check for the, let's say clean code, clean application, it's working correctly. So we'll just say if there is not a to-do, we can just throw a new convex error. And we can say something like to-do not found. But if we have it, we would like to update it. So here I'll say await context.database, and we'll say patch. If you want to update something, you will be using this method, and the thing we would like to update, here is the ID, and here is the field that we would like to update, which is completed. And we'll say to-do.completed. So whatever that is, we are going to negate it. And this is how we can negate it, right? Now, on top of this, I'd like to have the delete to-do mutation. It's really simple. I'll just go ahead, copy and paste the exact same syntax. We have delete to-do, we are getting the ID as the argument, and we would like to just delete it by passing the ID. And then the other thing could be, it could be updating the to-do. Now what I mean, if you say edit, this UI is going to be updated, and you can just change the text. So let's go ahead and try to build it. I'd like to give you the function instead of typing this out, because I think we just got the point. Here, this is the mutation that I have. We are going to get two different arguments, the text as well as the ID. So we're going to get the ID so that we know which to-do that we are trying to update, and then the new text. So again, we'll just say context db.patch. Here is the to-do that we'd like to update, and here is the new text. And then very last mutation, where we would like to clear every single to-do, because in the settings page, here we have the reset app button. Once you click to it, we're going to get an alert, and if we say delete all, it's going to delete every single to-do that you have in the database. So here is the mutation. Let me paste this in. We don't really need to get any arguments. We will just fetch every single to-do and run a for loop to be able to delete every single one of them. And for the response, you can return the deleted count if you really wanted to. So these are all the functions, and it's really magical because once you save it, everything is going to be here in this dashboard. So in total, we have 6 different functions. One is a query, and the other ones are mutations, right? One query, 5 different mutations. So I think we can leave this section here where we just set it up our database and created all the queries and mutations. Now actually, just before we end this section, let's try to see how we can set this up in a way that we can use it in our application, right? So now think about this. These are all the functions that we have created, but we are never using them, right? We never call them. So how can we make that work? If you take a look at your code base, we also got a .env.local file, and this is generated by Convex, and it is passing these fields so that we are connected to this project that we have. Now I'll go under the docs.convex.dev, and let's see how we can use it in a React Native application. So we have already done these steps, and here like it's trying to give you a query and import some data to your database, but we don't really need it. What we need is this part actually. So I will go ahead, import this thing under the root layout. So let's go under the root layout, which is this one, and import these from Convex and get the Convex client. So this is an instance that we can use in our entire application, and it is using the environment variable. So we are going to wrap our entire app with this Convex provider. So let's go ahead, wrap everything with this provider, and we're going to pass the client so that we are connected to the exact project, right? And now within our entire application, we can use Convex. And let's see how we can fetch all the to-dos in the home screen. I'll go under the tabs, right here under the use theme. Currently, of course, we don't have any to-dos, but let's try to see how we can call a query. So you would say use query, import it from Convex React, and then you would say api.todos, and it's completely type safe. This is the only table that we have. Under the to-dos, we have some functions. In this case, it is a query. You can just get the to-dos. And here, this is going to give us the to-dos, where we can just console log it. And of course, this should be something like an empty array. Let's open up the terminal. In the home screen, as you can tell, for a split second, it is undefined, which means you're in the loading state. But once it fetches it, once that has been fetched, it's going to be an empty array because we don't really have anything in the database at the moment. So we just make sure that we are connected to Convex. We created all the queries and mutations, and we can even call them. In the same way, we can use a mutation. So here I'll say something like use mutation and pass our mutation. Let's say API to-dos, let's say create, let's say add to-do. And this is going to give you the mutation. You can call this anything really. I'll say, add to-do. And now we have the mutation, we can actually call it. So let's try to set up a simple button. I will duplicate this. Instead of toggle the mode, I will say, add a new to-do. On press, we can call this function basically. Let's say we're gonna call the add to-do, and this is going to take an argument, which is going to be an object with the text. Let's say walk the dog, right? So let's say if I click to this button, right, it should create a to-do. I will click to it. Hopefully it's been created. And here you can see completely it's real time. You don't need to reload this. And these are the fields that we have. On top of this, Convex is going to give you underscore ID field and underscore creation time field. So yeah, like everything is working as expected. We can even just add one more mutation just to practice this. Here I would like to duplicate this. Let's say clear all to-dos, and we'll say call that mutation. Now we have the mutation. We can call this with a different button. So I'll say clear everything, clear all, let's say, and we can just say clear all to-dos. And we don't need to pass any arguments because here we don't really accept anything, right? We don't really have any arguments. Now let's go ahead and save. If I say clear everything, it should delete every single data that we have under the to-dos. Alright, so I hope you get the point. I think this is such a beautiful way to work with a database. You can use any other alternatives like Supabase, Firebase, but I think in this tutorial you should follow along with me so that we can have the exact same output. Alright, so I would like to leave this section right here, and let's try to actually delete these buttons and all the functions that we don't really need at this point. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this one, and hopefully I'll see you in the next section. Alright, so this is where we left. In the previous section, we have just set it up our database, which was Convex, right? We have created our schema and functions, and on top of it, we have wrapped our root layout with the Convex provider so that within our entire application, we can use our database, right? Now, there is one thing that I'd like to explain just before we get into the functions, which is going to be related to styling. Now here, let's say we are in the light mode. So we're going to get some colors, and even if we are in the dark mode, still we're going to get some colors. But this is going to be dynamic, right? So here we say if we are in the dark mode, we are going to get the dark colors. And in the else case, we are going to get the light colors. So we can take these colors. So instead of here saying something like background color of something like white or black, I would like to say use the colors, right? And I would like to say something like background. But as you can tell, this is undefined. So how can we pass the colors into this? Well, basically we can wrap this with a function, right? So here, let me do it pretty quickly. First, I will cut this part and cut this entire thing. And I will say something like const create styles. And this is going to be a function that is going to take the colors as an argument. And then we can paste this in, which is our styles. And we're going to return the styles. So let's save. And for the colors, we can pass the type. So let's say it's going to be color scheme. That is coming from the hooks folder, right? Now we can use this function to get these styles. And here I'll say for the background color, I'll say colors dot background, right? The BG. Now we can use this, and this is going to be dynamic depending on the colors object. Now, how can we get the styles? Well, basically, currently it is undefined, but we can say const styles, and we can say create styles and pass the colors. Now, if you save, it's going to work as expected. And if you change the mode, it'll actually apply this to the entire project. So I hope I explained this in a clear way. Basically, previously we didn't have this function, right? So we couldn't really make this to be dynamic because React says, or React Native says, hey, I don't really know what the color is, right? So we said, okay, we can wrap you with a function and pass the colors to you so that you can use it depending on that variable, right? You can use that argument. And here we just said, get the styles by calling the create styles function. And here's the colors. It's going to be completely dynamic, right? It is coming from the hook. So just keep this in mind. This is something really, really common that you're going to see in the React Native code bases. So this is something what I have seen actually when I joined into a company, when I was in college. So just really keep that in mind, really important. And we would like to use this convention actually. So again, I have prepared the GitHub gist. It's the same one. You can find the link in the description. We would like to create this file that is called homestyles.ts. For this, I'll go under the VS Code. Let's say go under the assets, and I think this is a folder that we haven't really talked about. I'll get there. So let's say create some styles, and we are going to create home styles.ts file. You can call this anything, but I would say just follow along with me, and this is such a beautiful name at this point. And we are going to paste everything that we have just copied from this file. So let me just copy the entire thing, and here you can see it is doing the exact same thing basically. It is wrapping these styles with a function so that we can get the colors, right? And at the end you are returning it. So let's save. This is what we have done, and I'd like to duplicate this. So basically copy and paste, but this time it's going to be for the settings. So let's say settings.styles.ts, delete the entire content and grab this from this file. And that's the very last thing that we need to copy and paste, I believe. So we can go right here and paste this in. Again, it is doing the exact same thing, creating some styles and returning it. Now this is not a CSS course, so I'm not going to explain what is flex 1 is, I'm not going to explain what is a padding, what is flex direction of row, what is a width, height. These are just super basic CSS thing, the CSS, let's say styling that you already know. Things like margins, paddings, border radiuses, background colors, that kind of stuff. Of course, there are some different things like an elevation. In this case, I just have a comment. This is used to create a shadow on the section, and specifically in Android. And like literally you can take a look at it once you complete the entire tutorial. For now, we don't really need to think about it at all. And I just realized we don't really have this and we are not using it. So I think I can just delete it from the source code. Okay, so really basic things like paddings, borders, and colors. So just keep that in mind. These are the things that we need to copy and paste so that we can get this beautiful UI without wasting 2 hours by typing them out. Alright, so I think we just got our styles and we are ready to get started with the home screen. And instead of using these styles, that was just for testing purposes, we can delete this completely and we can call the create home styles function. And we are going to pass the colors. Let's say this is going to be styles, and let's actually say home styles just to be a little bit more explicit. And then we can say styles.container, styles.content, but looks like we don't really have this class, so I'll just delete this text. Okay, so this is what we have, but of course we are going to fix it, I promise. Now, as you can tell, there is something broken in the UI, which is the content is outside of the view. This is what we call the safe area view, right? We would like the content to always be visible within this view, and it is never overlapping with the status bar. So for this, instead of just using a view, you can say use the safe area view component and import it from this package, which is already has been installed in our case. Here for the styles, we can say this is going to get homestyles.save area, which is going to basically add the flex of 1. Now we can save and everything should be within the actual save area view, right? And this is going to toggle the state. Now the background is not really in sync with our colors, with our theme, but we are going to get there. First, I'd like to explain a different concept, which is going to be about, let's say, the gradients. So as you can tell from top left to the right bottom, there is this beautiful transition, right? This color is changing, and this is possible thanks to a linear gradient. And we can just search for Expo. So they have a package that we can install by typing this. In this case, I will copy and paste, and make sure you paste it under an empty terminal. Basically, I will kill the application, paste this in, and we can rename this to be Convex so that we know which one is React Native and which one is Convex. So it looks like it's been installed. I will just say npx expo, and then we can reload our application. So how do we use it? Well, you can take a look at the documentation. This could be called as a self-closed component. Let me zoom in. And you can pass the colors, which is going to be an array. So this basically says go from this color to this one. And here are some styles that you can add on top of it. Or the other usage is you would wrap this with your components, right? And we'll be using both of them, I believe. So let's try to see how we can make that work. And for these color arrays, we actually have it already. I don't know if you have realized, but under the hooks, under the theme, for the light colors, we have all these gradients, right? It's an array. And we have the same thing for the dark colors as well. So we're going to be using them. What I'd like to do is wrapping my entire application with the linear gradient component. Let me actually type this out correctly, and I would like to import it from that package. Let me go ahead, copy and paste this import. It is coming from this package, and we're gonna pass the colors into it. So let's say here are some colors. That is going to be colors.gradients.background. And then for the styling, I can say it's going to be equal to homestyles.container, I believe. Let's save. And as you can tell, we have this linear gradient. I don't really know if it is visible, but there is definitely a color change that is going from this one to this one. And you can even visualize this by changing the color. So under the dark mode, we can go and update this one. So I'll just say FFF, which is white. It's going to go from this color to this one, which is looking like this. So it is absolutely working as expected. And this is what we have in the light theme. And there is one more thing that I'd like to set up, which is the status bar. So currently, I don't really know why this is working in real time. So if we're in dark mode, this is, if you're in light mode, this is in dark mode, and vice versa. But I think this should not be the default behavior. So let me go ahead, reload the app and see if it is going to work. So if it doesn't work, I will show you the solution. We are in the dark mode, this is light, okay, that's correct. And we are in the light mode, but still this is in the light mode. And it is not really visible, right? So we can fix this by adding a status bar component, which is going to be coming from, let's say, React Native. I'll say status bar imported, and there is also a status bar from Expo, but this is what I'll be using. It's not like this is better than the other one or vice versa. You can just do your research, I believe. So let's say bar style, and we can say colors the status bar style. And now it should work as expected, right? In the light mode is going to be dark, and in the dark mode it'll be light. You can see how that works. This will basically, let's say status bar style, in the light colors object, it's going to be dark content. And in the dark theme, it's going to be light content. And let's see how many fields we could get. So it could be either dark content, default, or light content. And now it's working dynamically, thanks to our custom hook. Alright, so now that everything is working as expected, I would like to create this header component in the home screen. So this is going to be the header component where we have number of to-dos that we have in total and the ones that are being completed, and then a progress bar that we could add. So once we add this, we are going to leave this section right here, and then in the next section we are going to implement adding, fetching, and maybe editing, deleting, everything, right? So let's try to get started with this header component. I will go under the VS Code, and instead of having this text, I think I'll just delete that, and I will add a separate component. So we could write the entire logic here, but it would be like 50 lines of code, 70 lines of code, and this file would be really ugly, right? A junky. So I don't really want to do it. Instead, I'll say it should be the header component. You can call this anything, but this is the name that I'll go with. And we can go under the components folder. So just click to right here under the root, create the components. And we would like to have the header.tsx file. And let's say rnfe, get the boilerplate, save, import, and we should be having the header component right here. Now let's try to get started with the actual content. So first we would like to get the number of to-dos that we have in the database. And for this, we can basically call our query. So this is what we have done in the past. We are going to get the use query hook, import the API, and get the to-dos query. And this is going to give us all the to-dos that we have in the database. And the other thing that I'd like to do is getting the styles. So we are in the home screen. That means we can use the home styles. So I'll say create home styles, and we're gonna pass the colors. And these colors are gonna be coming from our hook, which is useTheme, and always double check this is coming from the hooks, okay? So we'll say const, and please give us the colors that we would need in this file. Alright, so we're gonna be using these styles in a couple of seconds. Actually, right now we can just say something like style. Here I'll say home styles, and we can use the header class, which is going to give us some heading from the horizontal, vertical, and from the bottom direction. Now we have the to-dos. How do we calculate this percentage? So let's see, it's pretty basic math, literally primary school math. So here I'll say the number of completed to-dos. Let me zoom out so that you can see it clearly. So we'll say if we have to-dos, just go ahead, filter this out and get the total number of completed to-dos and get the length, right? So this will give us the completed count. And if we don't have anything in the database, we'll just say it's equal to 0. And then we can get the total count. We'll say if we have any to-dos, just give us the length. Otherwise, it could be 0. And then to get the percentage, we will basically divide this math, right? We'll do it and multiply it by 100 so that it is 100% direction, right? Like percentage, sorry, the unit is percentage. I hope that makes sense. This is how we can calculate it. And we're going to be using this value for the UI. Now let me zoom in. I think I can just zoom in 2 times. And here I would like to have a view instead of just a text component. Let's close this off, and for the style I would like to use the title container. So I am such a slow typer, for that reason I will paste this in, and I would like to have a linear gradient component. Just like what we have done in the past, we are going to import it from this package, which is this one, and we are going to put the colors, it is this array, and for the styles we will use icon container. And we can get the ion icons because we'll be using the flash outline as our icon. Since these are the same thing, we can just say 3f, it should be the exact same value. Alright, so we got the size. You can decrement it, increment it, however you wish. Now on top of it, I will have a view component right after the gradient. I'll paste this in, import the text, and walk you through it. This is super basic, so that's why I'd like to copy and paste. So we have today's tasks, and if you're wondering what the hell this is, basically it is this single quote. If you do it in this way, ESLint is going to warn you, which is really annoying, but let's make it happy and paste this in this way. And then the completed count, which is equal to 0, and total count is equal to 0. So this is what we have at the moment. And then we can add one more thing, which is going to be the progress bar. And we only want to see it if if the total count is greater than 0. So go under the text, under this one and this view. So just one above the very last one. I would like to copy and paste and walk you through it. Again, really basic UI. So I just zoomed out. Here we say if total count is greater than 0, we would like to see this UI. For now, I'll just say something like maybe true so that we can see it. So this is how that look at the moment. We have the progress bar container. or progress container, the bar container, bar itself with the linear gradient so that it can look like this. And then, the percentage, we are going to round this down. And here I think we have a different usage on the style. So far we just put an object, right? We either used in this way or we said here's an object. We have things like color is equal to, red. But here in this case we have something different, which is an array. So basically this is the usage that you would like to have whenever you would like to use some dynamic value, right? Whenever you want to use some JavaScript, you would like to put it as an array. So this says always add the progress fill class, but on top of it, make the width to be dynamic. And we're going to be seeing this in the next sections multiple times. So I think we can delete this conditional rendering. I don't know. Do we want to have it always? Yeah, I think I'll just leave it as it is. So that's the entire header component. Nothing complicated. We just have some basic UI with views and texts and a linear gradient component. And finally, some icons. And for the logic, we just have the query so that we can get all the to-dos and calculate the percentage. So that's gonna be it for this entire section. In the next one, we can get started with the next functionalities. So I'll see you there. Alright, so this is where we left. Now let's try to add this component that is called to-do input. And thanks to this, we can add to-dos into our database. So here, this is the entire screen, by the way. It's a little bit clunky, but I think that's fine. Let's try to clear this up pretty quickly. Alright, now we can go under the home screen. Right after the header component, we can paste this to-do input component, which we don't really have at the moment. So let's try to create it under the components. So I'll say to-do input.tsx. Shrink the left hand side and I'll say rnfe. Let me give a little bit of space from both of these places. And here we would like to use our mutation, right? So first I'd like to get my colors as always from our custom hook that is coming from the hooks folder. And then let's get the home styles. Again, we're in the home screen, so we'd like to get the styles from the home styles method. And then we would like to keep track of this state. So whatever user types in, we would like to keep track of it so that we can actually add it to the database. So I'll say get the use state. Initially it's going to be an empty string, but we are going to update it. Then our mutation. Again, I am just copying and pasting because we have done this in the past. So I think explaining it is a lot better than just typing this out letter by letter, right? So we're going to import the use mutation and API from Convex. We're going to get the mutation and assign it to this function. Then we can build the UI and hopefully call this mutation. First, I will create one last function. I'll say handle add to do, and you will see what this does. So I'll say this is an async function. For now, let's leave it as an empty function. So instead of calling this immediately, we are going to call this function, and within this function, we are going to call this mutation. And you're going to see why, I promise. So for this view, I would like to get the class that'll be input section. So let's delete the text and create one more view. Let me open this up and close this off. Here, instead of input section, we will have input wrapper class. And then we can put a text input element. So this is something that we are using for the very first time, I believe. Let's import it from React Native. We can delete the text and just save this for now. And I think we also need to import it so that we can see it here in the UI. So this is an input component with these styles. This is the placeholder that we have and the value, which is our state, right? It is this one. And whenever you type something in, it's going to update this state thanks to this line. And on submit editing, it says call this method. So let me open up the keyboard with Command Shift K. So when you say return, it's going to, I thought it's going to call the method, but looks like it doesn't. Now what we can do is maybe deleting the multi-line and if we say return, it should call the method, right? It is submit again. So we'll just say return, which is going to submit the form. All right, so if you have a multi-line instead, it's going to go to the next line. So just keep that in mind. This is something that you have just learned. All right, I'll delete the multi-line, and for the placeholder text color, we'll be using this one. And you can use anything, of course, like something like red. Let's see, I'd like to reload my application. Okay, so it is working as expected. Now, right after this text input, I would like to put a button, which is going to be this one. And again, I would like to use a linear gradient. So here, let me just say the touchable opacity and close this off, and then I'll explain. Let me zoom out. On press, we are going to call the method, and if it is active, it'll take this opacity. For the content, we can say, for now, just add. And of course, it says this should be under the text component. So let's do it. Let's say add and import the text. Okay, so this is how that look at the moment. And if it is active, the background is going to change. So for now, it doesn't, really annoying, but let's see how we can fix it. And this is going to be disabled because if you don't have anything here, it's going to be disabled. So let's type something in, and if it is active or not, this should update the opacity. So instead of just text, I would like to put a linear gradient with an icon. So let's import both of them. We have the colors. Now this says if we don't have anything in the input, let me actually get rid of the keyboard. Okay, so this says if there is nothing in the input, then use this color, but else use this one. So if I type something in, it's going to update the color for the button, right? So once you type in, the background is going to change. And then for the styles, it says, add the disabled if there is nothing in it, nothing into the button. And once again, here's an example for the array style usage, right? We say always add the styles, which are this one, right? Which is this one. It says add button. So it's going to always include this, but on top of it, it's going to include this one if there is nothing in the input. So I hope that makes sense. Now let's try to actually call this method whenever we submit this input, right? Or when we press to this button. Now what I'd like to do is adding a if check. So I'll say if there is not a new to do, or actually, sorry, I'll say if there is a new to do, in this case, I'd like to run this method. And I actually want to add the trim method at the end so that if it is in just a space, we don't really want to submit this, right? So here we'll say if we have actual content, in this case, just go ahead, create the try and catch block. In the try, we can say await, add to do, which is our mutation, and we need to pass the text. If you don't pass it, it's not going to happy with you, right? So we'll say add the text, and here it should be new to do dot trim. So we're going to basically put the value, and then we can say reset the form by putting this state to be an empty string. Now if we have any kind of errors, we can just throw it with an alert, and this alert is coming from React Native, right? We can say here's the title and description. So it would look something like this with the title and description, but we would not have these actions because we don't really pass them. In the incoming sections, we're going to see how to add these buttons. All right, and for the debugging purposes, we can just say console log error adding a to do, and here's the error itself. So now let's try to actually add something. So here I'll say maybe test to do 1. I will add this. It should be in the database right now. So let's try to do it once again. Now add something. It is working immediately and you don't need to refresh anything. So with this, I think now you're able to understand why we need this function. So why we didn't create this, why we didn't call this directly, right? We wrap this with a method so that we can handle the errors. If we have anything, we can just catch that and throw an alert, and we can add this if statement. So this is the convention that we will be following within this tutorial. And one more thing, I think as we add something, it should update here immediately, right? You don't need to refresh the application. Whenever you have a change in the database, this query will immediately understand it. So it is coming from the header component. So this query will immediately see it because Convex is going to send some events with socket, I believe, right? So once you add something, it's going to get the event, send it to right here, and it'll update the UI immediately. So it's insane. It's working in real time out of the box. And I think with this, we can leave this section right here. In the next section, we can get started with the rest of the application, which is going to be this part. So hopefully I'll see you in the next section. So this is where we left. Under the home screen, we have included the to-do input in the previous section. But now it is time to actually fetch these to-dos that we have in the database and display it nicely on the UI. So here under the tabs, under the index file, I will create I will just call my query instead of creating it. So this is what we had in the past. We can basically import the API as well as the use query and get every single to-do. And then we can display it on the UI. So I will delete this button that we don't really need in this home screen that just toggles the state for the mode. Here I'll say something like todos.map for every single to-do, just return me this component, which is going to be a text. Let's say we can put the to-do dot text. And let's make the React happy by passing the key, just like what we would do in React Web. So I'll say to-do._id so that it is unique. Once you save, you're going to see all the to-dos that we have in the database. But now, this is not really the best performant way of rendering some data. If you take a look at our notes, in the past I said there is a better way or a performant way of rendering lists. So instead of doing it in this way, you could use a FlatList component. And you can double check that. I will explain what that does. But basically, this is a performant way of rendering basic UI. So let me explain pretty quickly why do we need it in the first place. So if you take a look at this UI, you can see we have really like bunch of different repetitive elements. So this one, that one, this one, and a couple of different ones, right? Now imagine in the database you have 100 different to-dos. You don't really want to render it all of them at once because here you can only see 4 of them. The rest, 96, is not really visible, right? So you don't really want to render it. But if you do it in this way, it's going to render every single one of them. But if you use the FlatList, it's only going to render maybe the first one or, yeah, you know, like only the first one. And as you scroll to the bottom, it's going to start rendering the rest of it. So all in all, it'll only render what you see on the UI. And as you scroll, it would render the rest of it. So FlatList is the performant way of rendering lists, but you don't need to always use it, right? At some point, maybe you would have this where if you know, like at maximum, you would have only, let's say 15 to-dos, then you can use this usage. But if you don't really know if you're going to have 100, 1000, then probably you should use the FlatList component. So we'll get there in a second. First, I'd like to add a loading state. So here I'll say if is loading. And how can we get the loading state? Well, it is coming from Convex. If your query result is equal to undefined, that means you're in the loading state. So we can say const is loading, and we can say todos is equal to undefined. So if this is equal to undefined, that means we are in the loading state, else it is false. Here I would like to put a component, let's say just return the loading spinner. And let's try to create this pretty quickly. I will go ahead under the components, create this file, let's say .tsx, and this will be only UI related. So I would like to copy and paste, and you can grab this from the GitHub gist as well. So under the GitHub gist, find the loading spinner.tsx. It's only 20 lines of code. So go ahead, copy it and paste it right here. And for the hooks, I think we can just import it from the hooks folder so that we don't really have any errors. Okay, so we just have an activity indicator component, which is coming from React Native, and we are going to see it in a second. So let's say import the loading spinner and take a look at the result. Just to be able to see it, I'll say true. All right, so this is what you're going to see if you're in the loading state. Now let me bring this back and put the is loading as the if statement. Okay, now let's get started with the FlatList component instead of doing it in this way. So here I will call the FlatList component coming from React Native. And this is going to take a couple of different props. The very first one is going to be the data that we would like to map over. So I'll say data. This is the to-dos array that we would like to go over it, right? And here I'll say for every single one of them, just call this function. Now you can either put it inline, right? So let me pretty quickly show this. We'll say you can get the item, and this has to be called as item. So you cannot say something like to do. Nope, this has to be item, and you can get the index as well as the separators. So let's get the item and just maybe return a text component and say item dot text. So it's going to work in the exact same way, but now this is a lot more performant. And of course, we don't really want to have this as basic as it is. So instead of putting it inline, I will say just call the render to do item method. And we are going to create this function in a second. First, let's say the key extractor is going to be grabbing the item and saying item dot underscore ID. So this is going to give a unique ID for every single item, right? For every single to do. And let's add the style as well. We can just say home styles dot, I think, to do list. And then we can get started with the function, but just before we do so, I'll say content container style is going to be equal to home styles dot to do list content. Let's say to do list content so that our UI looks clean. Now let's try to create this function where we would like to basically return a to do element. So let's put them side by side, and here I would like to create the method. So I'll say const render to do item, where we would like to get the item and return something from this function. And let's say we are getting the item, so we can destructure this. Let's make TypeScript happy. We are getting an item, which is type of to do. But how can we get this type of to do? Well, Convex provides this. So we can say type to do, and we can say document imported from the generated folder, and then pass the to-dos table. Now, if you hover over this, here you can see every single to-do has these fields. So this is how you can get the type from Convex. Now it's time to return something, right? So here I'll say maybe this is going to be a function where we can say return this part. Here I'll have a view component coming from React Native, and this will get the style as to do item wrapper, right? Within this view, I would like to put the linear gradient component. So let me pretty quickly type this in, actually copy and paste, and add some styles into it. So here, first I will add the colors that we would like to use, and let me save to get this formatting. And then after the colors, I would like to add some styles, which is going to be the to-do item. And the other thing that I'd like to show is a prop. So basically, I will say instead of going from top to bottom, for the linear gradient color, we would like to go from top left to the right bottom. So let's see how we can make that work. Basically, this is the X direction, right? And here is the 0 point. And in the Y direction, this is again the 0 point. So this is 0 to 0, and here is 1 to 1, right? So this is X of 1, and this is Y of 1. If you combine both of them, into one place, it'll be 1.1. So basic math once again. Let's try to see it in action. I will say the start and end is going to be a prop. So it's going to start from the top left and it'll go to the right bottom. And the content for the linear gradient is going to be a button. So I'll say touchable opacity. We can import this from React Native. And then I can say the style is going to be home styles checkbox. And right after the style, I will say the active opacity is going to be equal to 0.7. And finally, on press, once we click to it, basically we would like to do something, but for now I'll just leave it as an empty function. So it's basically this check mark that we are trying to build at the moment. So within this touchable opacity, I will have one more linear gradient. So let me paste this in. So I know that this looks a little bit weird, but just to be able to get this UI, we have to type this out so that our UI looks clean. And I will put the colors. So I will say if the item is completed, use this success color, but else this muted color. And success is this green color that we have if it is completed. Alright, then right after the colors, I would like to put the style that is going to be in this way. Okay, so let's get into the content. Right after the linear gradient, we will say if it is completed, show the check mark and import the ion icons. Okay, so if we click to it, of course, nothing happens, but we are going to implement that. And just to simulate it, we can just say something like true, and it should be right here. Let's do the same thing for this one and this one. I'll say if it is equal to true, this would be the output. And if it is false, notice how the border color is going to change, right? Okay, so let's bring this back to the previous state. Now, when we click to one of them, it should update the UI. How can we make that work? So we are gonna visit the onPress method, and instead of creating it here, I'll say handle toggle to do. And actually, I will pass a prop. So let me bring this back. Here I'll say call the handle toggle to do, and we are gonna pass the ID, right? So we can say, I think this is the item. So we'll say get the item and pass the ID into it. Now let's create this function. Here I'll say const handle toggle to do. Let's say this will be an async function, and we'll do something within this. And let's say we are gonna get the ID. Now this ID is a type of to-do's ID. You can say string, but TypeScript is not going to be happy with you in a couple of minutes if you do it in this way. So let's say it's going to be an ID. We can import it from Convex generated. And let me show you the import. So it is coming from here, from the data model. And specifically, it's going to be ID of to-dos, right? And then in this method, we can basically say try and catch block. In the try, we would like to say call our mutation, which is going to be toggle to do. Let's try to get this mutation. Here I'll say const toggle to do. Now this has been defined in our Convex database, right? But we need to define it and call it basically. So let's say toggle, am I typing this correctly? Yes, toggle to do. We'll say use mutation, pass the API dot, okay, I can't talk literally, API dot to-dos dot toggle to do. So this is going to update the state. As you can tell, it would negate whatever the current state is. Okay, so we assigned this into this variable, and we can call this by passing the ID. And if we have any errors, basically we can console log this as well as returning an alert in the UI. So let's save and click to it. Hopefully it should update the entire UI. So it says 2 completed, 3 completed, and if you toggle this, it's going to say 2 completed. And the progress bar is working correctly. Now it is 100%, as you can tell. And let's try to put the actual text. So it's going to look like this, right? Here I will go right after, let me see, under this touchable opacity, right? But still under the linear gradient, I would like to say have a view, and within this view we will pass a text. So let me import the text coming from React Native. We will use this class no matter what happens, but if it is completed, we would like to add these classes on top of it, right? So it's going to update the text decoration, the color, and the opacity. And as the content, we will have the text. For this view, I'll just say style is going to be equal to home styles dot, let's say, to do text container. And let me put them side by side, save. It should be right here. If it is completed, these styles would be added. Here we can see the text decoration is line through, color has been muted, and opacity has been updated. And let's try to put the actions. Right after this text, I will give a little bit space, scroll, and paste this in. Again, it's really simple. All we have is a view, touchable opacity, linear gradient, and icon. Let me zoom out so that you can see it clearly. So again, we have a view. This is the very first option, which is to edit something, and then the delete icon with the button, right? So when you click it, nothing happens because the function is empty, but we are going to implement it in the incoming sections. So just before we end this section, I would like to explain one more thing. Now, what happens if the to-dos array is equal to an empty array, right? So let's say in your database, you don't have anything. This is going to be an empty array. In this case, instead of just seeing an empty UI, we can put something like no to-dos found, right? So for this, the FlatList component has a prop called list empty component. In this case, we can put an empty state component. So let's try to create it, and you can copy and paste it from the GitHub gist. Here I'll say under the components, have the empty state.tsx. Again, it is only UI, so let me copy and paste it from the GitHub gist. So it is right here that I'd like to copy and paste into this file. So we got the colors. I don't know why this is not really working. Is this not the correct path? Yes, it is, but let's put add. Delete it, bring this back. Okay, so I think this says you're importing it as the export default. Yeah, so let's try to just have it in this way. Okay, so we just have a view that says no to-dos yet, add your own to-do to get the application, right? Something like this. I didn't read it, but let's say if this is an empty array, this is what you would see. So let me bring this back, and very last thing that I'd like to explain. So for now, let me add some stuff. Okay, so now as you scroll, here we can see we have a scroll indicator, right? If you want to get rid of this, you could literally say shows vertical scroll indicator will be equal to false. By default, it is equal to true. Now you cannot really see that, the indicator, right? And in my case, I'd like to see it. So for that reason, I will comment this out, and you can have this in your notes in the source code. So with this, I think we can leave this section here. In the next one, we can implement edit and delete functionalities. So hopefully I'll see you in the next section. So currently these two actions don't really do anything. Now in this section, let's try to make them work, and we're gonna get started with the delete action. Let's go under the actual part of the code, which is this trash icon. Once we clicked it, we would like to call a function called handle delete to do. We are going to create this, and we are going to pass the item underscore ID so that we know which to do that we are trying to delete. Let's try to create it. We can shrink this now, we don't really need it. Let's say const handle delete to do is going to be an async function, and in the same way we would like to get the argument, which is type of the to-do's ID, and we would like to do something within this function. So let me get the next mutation, which is going to be, let's say, API to-do's delete to do, and assign it into this variable. Now we can basically call this within the handler method. And just before we write the code, I'd like to show you something, which is going to be the alert. So here, once user clicks to it, instead of deleting the to-do immediately, I would like to show an alert component with a title, a description, and then two different actions. One is cancel and the other one is to actually delete it. So let's try to see how we can make that work. So we're going to get the alert, and just like in the past, it's going to take a couple of different fields. So the first one is going to be the title. So let's say, so what did I say? It says delete to do for the title. So I'll say delete to do, and let's make sure we don't have any typos. And right next to it, I'll say, are you sure you want to delete this to do? So instead of typing this out, let me copy and paste so that we don't waste any time. And then we can put our options, right? The buttons, which is going to be an array, as you can tell. So we're going to put the array, and every single one of these buttons will be an object. So first one is going to say cancel. So this is the text. And how it is going to look, let's say cancel, and the style. So you have a couple of different styles, such as cancel, default, or destructive. I'll go with cancel. And let's duplicate this. This is going to say delete. For this style, we're going to go with the destructive so that it is in the red color. And on press, we would like to call our, let's say the mutation, right? Delete to do and pass the ID into it. Why this is complaining? Because it should be wrapped with the object. Alright, so let's actually test this out. I would like to delete this 321. Let's say delete. If I say cancel, nothing happens. But if I delete it, it's going to actually update the UI. And it's going to get rid of that from the database as well. So we can double check that, but I think, we don't even need it, right? It's literally been deleted and we can see it from the UI. So this is how easy it is to implement the delete functionality. Get your mutation, and once you click to this button, call this function where you can have the alert with the options. So that's gonna be it for the delete functionality. But now we need to build the editing action as well, right? So let's say you have this to do, you say edit this, it's going to update the UI where this part will be completely changed with this one, right? It's going to replace the UI. And you can change the content. For this, we are going to have a state and two different buttons, which is going to cancel the state or cancel the action. You're going to go into the previous state and you can save your changes. So we are going to need two different states, one for the edited text and the other one is for the editing ID. Because think about it, like if you click this one, it's going to update only this to do, right? It's not going to update this one. So we need to keep track of the ID so that we know which to do that we clicked. I hope that makes sense. So let's try to just clear the UI and get into the VS Code. As I said, we're gonna need two different to-dos. Let me copy and paste it and actually paste it right here. And we can delete this method that we are not using. So the edit text is going to be an empty state and the editing ID will be null initially. But of course it can get a to-do ID later in the video, right? So these are the states that we would need, and then we are gonna need a couple of different functions just like these ones. So let's try to create them one by one. So I'll say const handle edit to do, and let me try to zoom in. This is going to be a function where we will take the to do, that is type of to do, and we'll do something within this function. Let's duplicate it twice. So we will have handle save edit. So we are going to call this when we say save, and we are going to have another function for the cancel state. So let's say handle cancel edit. So this is not going to take any argument, right? Same thing for this one. Let's say this will be an async function, and we are going to build all of them one by one. Let's give a bit of space and get started with this one. So like what'll happen is this: when you click to this button, it's going to call this method. where we would like to update the set edit text with whatever the to-do is. So we'll say todo.text, and then set editing ID, and we'll say todo._ID. And then when you say cancel, we basically want to reset this state. So this is going to be null and an empty string. Now this will actually handle the logic where we would like to call our mutation, right? So let me go ahead and grab that mutation. I will duplicate this one, and it is going to be update to do. Let's say update to do as well. And within this function, we can say just create a try and catch block. In the try, we can say call the mutation and pass the fields. So we'll say ID will be editing ID, and the text, let's say, is going to be edit text dot trim. So we'll get rid of these spaces. And now this says maybe this is equal to null. How do I know it? So we can wrap this try and catch block with a if statement, with an if statement, right? Here I'll say if we have an editing ID, only then actually go ahead and run this try and catch block. And once we update it, we can say set editing ID to be equal to null, and we can just reset the state for the text, right? So just leave it as an empty string. And in the catch block, I can just put the classic console log as well as the alert. Now we would like to call all of these functions in the UI, but now we don't really have this state. So let's try to create it under the return statement of this render to do item. So here I'll go ahead, put them side by side. Let me pretty quickly find it. So we have this view no matter what happens, right? It is this right hand side. Let me cut this for a second. So it is the to do text container, which is this part. Now instead of only having this, I will say if we are editing, we would like to return this part, else we would like to return this part. And in the else case, we'll just put what we had, which is this kind of a UI. But if we are editing, we would like to see this one. And currently we don't have the is editing field. Let's try to create it. I will go here, I'll say const is editing is going to be equal to, if editing ID is equal to item._ID. So if this is equal to true, that means you are updating that to do. Let's scroll to the bottom, and we would like to create the UI for this. It's going to be around 30 lines of code, so let's try to type this out. First, we'll have a view component, and let's turn this off. It's going to get the edit container as the style. And then for the actual style field, for the actual content, we'll say text input. And this is going to be a self-closed component. So let me put this in this way. Once again, we are building this section at the moment. Text input and two different actions. So we would like to import this from React Native and give a couple of different props, such as the style, value, onChange, autofocus, multiline, placeholder, and the text color for that. Now, why this is not really happy with us? So I think it says text is not defined. Let's try to import it from React Native and it should be happy again. So let's save and test this out. I will click to it. UI should update, but it doesn't, because if you click to this one, we are not calling any functions, right? Here it is an empty function. So let's say handle edit to do, and it'll take the item dot underscore ID. Now, actually it should take the item itself. Now if you click to it, it should update the UI immediately, right? So we are editing, and that means we're going to see this part. Now we would like to have the action buttons. So here I'll say view. For the style, we will say home styles dot edit buttons. Within this view, we can put the touchable opacity for the check mark. Let me go ahead, copy and paste. So this is the save button. we have the opacity, linear gradient, icon, as well as the text. Once you click to it, it's going to call the handle save edit method, right? So right after this one, or actually after the button, we are gonna put the cancel button. Let me once again copy and paste. It's basically the exact same thing, but we are updating the icon, the text, as well as the method. So if I say cancel, nothing would happen. But let's say this is going to be something like learn JavaScript. And if we save, it should update immediately, right? And it's been updated in the database as well. So that means now we can edit our to-dos and delete them successfully. And thanks to this editing state, so it is this one, this ID. If you click to this one, it would only update this part of the UI, right? So that means everything is working as expected. So this is how we can add the edit functionality as well. Now I know that this is not the most clean code, right? It is 200 lines of code in a single file, which is completely fine, but maybe you would like to take them and put them into different components, or maybe some custom hooks that you would like to create. But I'll leave it for a different tutorial. So I'd like to just keep it simple, beginner friendly. I will have everything in this file. And actually we have already a couple of different components that have been created, and we are calling them right here. So with that, I think we can leave this section right here, and in the next one we can get started with the settings screen, which currently look like this. So with that, I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so this is where we left. In this section, we would like to get started with the settings screen, and this is how it's going to look like at the very end. So we have the header component, then the progress stats. So we're going to see the total amount, the completed, and the active. And then we have the preferences. So here's the full component. We will have 3 different switches. These two won't really do anything, but this one will actually update the dark mode. So this is just something that I have put just to make the UI look nice. And then we have the danger zone, which is going to reset the entire application. So once you click to this button, it's going to ask you for a confirmation. Let me see which one is it. Okay, so it is this one that says, like, are you sure you want to delete the entire application? And if you say yes, it's going to delete every single to-do that you have on the, like in the database. So with this in mind, let's get started with the settings screen. Let me just clear the screen and open up the VS Code. So I have 2 different terminals. In one of them, I am running Convex, and then here I am running the actual application. So first, I'd like to create 2 different states so that we can keep track of these. And this one is already coming from our hook, right? So I'd like to just copy and paste this because it's super simple. Let me just zoom in and give a little bit of space. Okay, so we have is auto sync, which is going to be true by default, and same for the notifications enabled. Now let's get the use theme hook from the hooks, and we'd like to get 3 different values, which is going to be the colors, let's say is dark mode, and then our method. Then we'll be using all of them in a second. And for the styles, we have a method called create settings styles, right? We're going to pass the colors into it. And then this is going to give us some styles. We can call this anything. And in this case, I'll go with the name, settings styles, let's say. All right, now we can get started with the UI. The first thing I will have is a linear gradient component. So let's try to close this off correctly. And then we would like to pass the colors. So as always, you are going to get it from the colors, right? From our custom hook. And then we can put the style. I'll say style is going to be settings styles dot container. And within this, we can put a save area view component so that our content is within the actual UI, right? I'll say save area view. And let's delete this text. Actually import it from this package, and for the class name, for the style, I should say, I will say setting styles dot save area, which is going to give the flex of 1. And then we can put the header component. It'll just be the text as well as the icon. So let's import it and see the output. Alright, so this is what we have at the moment. This is just the header component. Now after the header component, we can have a scroll view component so that we can actually scroll through this page, right? Here I'll go and say something like scroll view component, and this will be coming from React Native. I think we have used it in the home screen as well. Let me just double check if we actually have it. No, we don't. Okay, so here we use the FlatList, but you can also use a scroll view component. And it is similar, but again, there are some differences, such as FlatList is a little bit more performant for long lists, right? So it's the very first time we are using this component, and it's actually pretty similar to FlatList. So first we can add the style. Oops, let's say style, and this is going to get the setting styles dot, I think, scroll view class. And let's see what this does. I think it just has flex 1 only, so that it is taking the entire remaining space. And then for the content container style, I will say setting styles dot content. And let's see what this does. It just has some paddings and the gap between the children. And finally, I will say shows vertical scroll indicator to be equal to false. I don't really want to see it. By default, it is equal to true. And then we can put the progress stats. Now I'd like to take this and put it into a separate component, into a separate file. So let me call this, I'll say progress stats, and we can create this under the components. I'll copy the name, .tsx, rnfe, save, and import it right here. Now this is what we can see. Let's try to build the component within this file. And just before we build the UI, let's try to get every single, let's say, variables, functions that we're gonna need. So from our custom hook, we are gonna get the colors so that we can actually get the styles by calling this method. And then we can get all the to-dos from the database. So we have done this in the past, but let's do it once again. We'll say get every single to-do by calling a query, which is our convex to-dos the get to-dos query. And then we can calculate the total to-dos. So this is what I'll be doing. I'll say if this is not undefined, right? If you have something, then just get the length, but else this could be equal to 0. And then for the completed, we will basically filter out the is completed field. So let me zoom out. Like if anything is equal to false, we are going to remove them from this array. This is what we are doing. So this will give you the completed to-dos. And for the active to-dos, you could just say from the total, distract the completed to-dos. So that's it. That's the only thing we need to be able to build the UI. First, I will have a linear gradient. Let's close this off correctly and import it. Again, this is something that we have done multiple times, so I don't really think if we need to type this out word by word. And then we can get the text that says progress stats, and then we can actually build all of them one by one. So the first one will be a linear gradient. Again, I think I am too lazy to type this out. Okay, this will take some colors and some styles. Let me get this. So I have just copied and pasted the colors as well as the styles. We're gonna get the styles from the stat card, and on top of it, we are gonna use the border left. We'll just add this color on top of it. And then within this, we can get a view, which is going to be this list icon. So we're gonna build this part and then the rest of it, right? So let's try to do it. Again, it's just an icon within a view. I'd like to paste this in, get the view from React Native, and ion icons from Expo. Alright, so this is the output that we would like to have. Right after this, we're gonna put the total amount of to-dos. So a text, and it says stat info is not defined. And I think we will never use it, so I can delete the style and nothing should change. So we have a view with two different texts. And do we need this view? Let me double check. Yes, we actually need it because we are using the flex in the, I think, in the parent component. All right, so this is the output for the completed or the total to-dos, sorry. And on top of this, we can add the completed to-dos. So I will go outside of this linear gradient. Okay, so let me just put a comment just in case you have it in the source code. I'll say total. So this is the comment that I just added. Now I'd like to wrap this with a view because I think I forget this. So I'll say view, create this. And for the style, this is going to get the stats container. And cut this, paste it right here. Now the total to-dos is wrapped with this parent component. Let's try to copy this and we are going to paste it. Let's save. Alright, so this is what we have, but we would like to update the content, right? This is going to be the completed. So instead of total, let's say completed. Then we can update the actual variable. This is going to be equal to completed to-dos. And for the icon, it's going to be check mark circle, I believe. And we can update the color as well. Instead of primary, I'll use the success color so that it is looking just like this one. And we can update the border color as well. So I'll just say, I think success as well, right? Okay, so that's the exact same output that we have in the end result. Now it's time to get the active. So I will copy this and let me just add a comment. I'll say completed to-dos. We can copy this and paste this, right? Add the comment. This is going to be, let's say, active to-dos. For the text, we can say active. Let's say active to-dos. And for the icon, let me double check. We're gonna have the time as our icon. And for the colors, we could use warning instead of success. So I will update both of them with warning. Alright, so I believe that's the entire component that we need to build. There is literally no logic other than just calling our query. And we are calculating 3 different values. Alright, so that's the component. Now, right after this, we can put the actual preferences tab. So I will go within the scroll view, and right after this one, I'll say the preferences. So here's the comment, and let's say preferences. I would like to create this under a separate component as well. I'll say preferences. Now I think I have made a mistake in the past because I have put these states into this file. But what I'd like to do, actually delete them and put it under this component. So let's first create the components. I'll say .tsx, rnfe, and we can give a little bit of space. Then let's try to import it. Now we can go right here and actually get these values. So I'd like to copy them, and we are not using these, so we can delete that. And actually cut this from here and get rid of the use state, because I think we don't really need it in this file. Okay, so why do we have an error? Let's save this file. Now we should be able to get the preferences, and we can put these states. So once again, these are the things that we need in this component. So we don't really need to create it right here. This is something that you should keep in mind. And on top of this state, we would like to have the dark mode switch as well, right? We have these two, but also we need this one. So we would like to actually paste this part where we'll get the use theme from the hooks and then our styles. And since we are in the settings page, we'll use this function. And I would like to get a linear gradient. Let's close this off. Oops. Let's close this off, import the actual component, and save this file. Now we would like to get the text, which is going to say preferences, but it will take this section title as the class. And let's first build the dark mode switch. So I'll have a view. This will get, let's just first get the import, and this will get the setting item as the style. Then within this, I would like to create one more view. For this style, I'll copy this, paste this in, and this will take the setting left. Okay, within this view, I will create an icon, which is going to be this moon icon, right? So let's try to paste this in. It'll be coming from ion icons, and I would like to wrap this with the linear gradient. So I know that this is kind of repetitive, but this is just for design purposes, right? And we are able to scroll through it because we are using a scroll view component. So let me actually double check. Here we have the scroll view, if you just have a regular view, actually you cannot scroll through it. Let me cut this one as well, save. Now you cannot really scroll through this component. So this is why we need this in the first place. All right. And right after this one, I will say get the text that will say dark mode. And now right next to it, we can use the switch component. I will go outside of this view and I'll say import the switch from React Native. So this is a component that we are using for the very first time, and this will get the value. So the state that it is going to depend on. So I'll say is dark mode, either true or false. And on value change, we can call our method, which is a toggle dark mode, right? And then we can add the thumb color. I'll say FFF, and it should be hashed at the, prefix. Let's save. And it is working as expected. Now we could say this will be something like red, and this is what the track is, right? Or sorry, the thumb, not track. We can use track as well. Let me save and show you what the track is. So we'll say track color. I think this should be a prop. Under the switch, I'll say track color. And this will be an object. We will say if it is false, we will say it's going to take the colors dot border. But if it is true, it'll take the colors dot primary. Let's save. All right, so this background is the actual track color. In the false, let's say something like red. Okay, for some reason it did not update. So I just paused the video and take a look at the solution. So we have to use this iOS background. So this by default does not work. If you want this to get a different color for the false case, you could say add this iOS background color, and you can say, colors dot border. And now let's try to use something like red just to check if it is going to work or not. And here it is working, right? In the false case, this will be the color. So this is going to work in Android by default, but for iOS, just keep this in mind. And then right after this view, we can put the setting item. So I think we can literally copy this and paste it. I will add a comment for this one. Let's say dark mode, and copy the comment and say, this is the, I think, for the notifications. Okay, so here for the text, I will say notifications. For the icon, I think we will use the notifications, and let's just save. Okay, we can change the color. Here we are using primary, but I think in this case, it's going to be warning. And the other thing that we would like to update is the on value change, because currently, so if we just save, it's going to update the dark mode. We want this to be related to the state of notification enabled, and the value is going to be is notifications enabled. Now this will not do anything, but the switch is working, right? Okay, so I think that's the entire thing. Let me double check. Maybe we can change the background color as well. Currently it is primary. Let's say it's going to be warning as well. And let's see how that would look in the dark mode. All right, so everything is working correctly. Finally, let's copy this once again with its comment. And this is going to be for the auto sync. So first, the color is going to be success. The text is going to be auto sync. And let's get the success as well. Value is going to be is auto sync. And here we'll say set is auto sync. And whatever the value is, we are just going to negate it. So with this, I think it should be working correctly as expected. So that's the entire component. I think here the only thing we have learned is the switch component, and the rest is the same thing that we have done in the past. So on top of this, the very last component we would like to have is the danger zone component. So let's see how we can build it. Again, it'll be really similar to what we have done in the past. So let's say get the danger zone component, and we would like to copy the name, create it under the components.tsx. Oops, let's say .tsx. and get the boilerplate, give a little bit of space, and import it in this file. Now let's get into it and try to build the logic. And just before we build it, once again, just remember that we have to have an alert. So this is going to be the title, the description, and then two different actions, right? So let's try to build the logic and then we'll get into the return statement. So I'd like to copy and paste. It's really simple. All I have to do is just walking you through it, right? So we're going to get the colors as always. Then we're going to get the styles, then a mutation. So this is what we had in the Convex section. So this will basically clear every single to-do in the database. And then it's going to return the deleted count, right? So we would like to use this value to show something like successfully deleted whatever the amount is. So result.deleted count, it could be 10, 1, 5, whatever that is. And if it is equal to, let's say 10, we will say to-dos, we will add the s at the end, but if it is just 1, we are going to keep the English correct, we'll just put singular, right? So I hope that makes sense. And this looks a little bit weird, but it's nothing different what we have done in the past. We are passing the title, description, and then our buttons, which is an array of objects, right? We have the object to be able to cancel it, and then the other button to be able to delete it. Style is destructive, this is the text, and onPress, we are going to call this method. So let's import the alert from React Native, and this should be good to go. It is just calling our mutation, right? So that's it, the entire logic. Let's try to build the actual component. I'd like to copy and paste and walk you through it. It's just 10 lines of code. We're going to get the linear gradient with a text, a button that is going to call our handler function, and then two different icons. Okay, so this is the output, really simple and basic. Let's click to it. If you say cancel, nothing would happen. Currently we have 4 different to-dos, right? Let's say delete all of them. It's going to say deleted 4 to-dos, your app has been resetted. Now let's see, nothing here. If you add something only once and say reset the app, it'll just say 1 to-do, right? It is not adding the s at the end. So this is what this code does, just in case if it is confusing. So believe it or not, but we have completed the entire project. Let's test it out one last time from the simulator, and then I will open up my physical device and we are going to test it out. So here I'll say something like, oops, not here, but let's say walk the dog, right? I will add this one and let's say learn something like JavaScript. And let's check this one as well, test this out. Let's say walk the dog 1, 2, 3, save and uncheck. So everything is working. Let's add something like test. We can delete it. And we can see the number of completed to-dos here in the settings page. And this is working in real time. So when you add something, so currently it says total of to-do, right? Sorry, 2 total to-dos. If you add something else, here you don't really need to refresh the app. It's going to immediately get the latest data. Okay, now let me open up my phone and actually test this out live here in front of you. So first I'll get the QR code and let me say open up the camera and I can basically scan this. Let's see, like it is opening, compiling. It's loading the to-dos and here we go. This is working in real time. I will go under the settings and let's say this is going to be dark mode. Now it's in the dark mode and let's go into the home screen. So I will delete something and notice how it's going to update in real time. So I will delete this DSA. Let's say delete. Here it should be working in real time. And let's say completed, uncompleted. We can edit this one. Let's say JS 1, 2, 3. Save, and here we can see it's been updated. Alright, so I think we have just completed the entire tutorial. I've tried to put everything that is essential that you would need to get started with your own mobile application. So if you take a look at it, we have actually learned all the essentials that we would need. Things like the tab navigator, the stack navigator, the text input, the buttons, the alerts, the edit functionality, and a complete backend as well, right? We have used Convex, but you can use anything that you wish. It's mostly the same, but the syntax, of course, is going to be a little bit different. And then we have learned about the switch component, how to implement dark mode, light mode, the save area view, the status bar, like the alerts. I think we have just gone through everything that you would need to get started with your first mobile app. And honestly, I have a bunch of different tutorials that are much more complex than this. You can check them out. I can leave some of the links in the description. If you would like to check them out, definitely do so. And if you have enjoyed the tutorial, subscribe and leave a like. That's pretty classic, but it actually helps the channel. So with that, hopefully I'll see you in the next one.